Welcome to episode 3 of Property Untangled podcast on 107 FM. Here to assist you through the world of property investment. Myself, Dave Petersen. It's a guest episode today. It's the letting agent's chair. We're going to focus on life on the ground, what landlords need to know about tenants, compliance, EPCs and some rents. Today, I'm joined by Chris Hodgson, a trusted Hull letting agent. The company of Let's Rent Hull, who's been on the ground in Hull for 40 odd years, dealing with tenants, landlords and the day-to-day challenges of property for 20 plus years. Now that's something to listen to. We're going to get a real view of what's happening in the Hull's rental market. So Chris, can you please introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, I'm Chris Hodgson. Thank you for having me here. My property journey's been a bit of a roller coaster, but over the years I've always had businesses in Hull, and over that period just acquired a few properties. That moved on to property management after selling a few and being asked to look after them. And that property management business has grown now over the years.
Yeah, okay. So how and why did that happen? Why did you step into property?
It was just always seemed an exciting area. My first property was one gentleman who worked for me who was selling, and managed to buy that off him at an early stage down Ella Street. That was 40 years ago, and I still have that property today. Yep. And it's one, I suppose, as just a naturally fairly lazy person, it's one where you can get a lot of rewards without having the daily grind. You've just got to make some very sensible decisions and the right ethics, I think, and moral standards to ensure that the properties are well run, well managed and well cared for, and always put the tenants' needs and wants first, and the rest then looks after itself.
So you weren't necessarily an accidental landlord. You've seen that as a vision to go forward.
I'd say a bit of each, really. I think it wasn't a great passion early on, but life sends you in certain directions, sometimes by design, sometimes by default, and it's been a bit of a mixture of both of those. But once in, I'm 100% committed to whatever I do, and certainly over the last 20 years, this has become a passion and something I've put 100% into.
Fairly addicted to it now, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you say you actually enjoy property?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's not just a business; it's a vocation. I mean, at the end of the day, you're providing housing for people, and but you get pleasure from enhancing other people's lives, and that is what we try to do. We always put the tenant first, and you get a win-win situation. Then the tenant moves into quality accommodation, they're properly looked after. The landlord then gets good rent, because why would the tenant move? They're in the best house they can be in, and us as managing agents get our commission. So it works perfectly for everybody. I think some agents may do it the other way around and focus on the commission and on the financial side, and to me that's the wrong way to approach it.
Yeah. Just briefly on that, you mentioned it's been a roller coaster, and I guess the agent fees have changed significantly over the years. Have these things been big factors? Have you had to change or diversify your business model because of that? It's
certainly become more challenging. There's a lot more compliance issues on landlords and on agents now, and this is, I think, where governments have to be careful with what they load onto landlords and agents. Because ultimately, it's often thought that every landlord makes a lot of money, but it's not necessarily the case. A lot don't make any money, a lot make a small amount. But the extra charges mean that it often goes on to the end user, which is the tenant. And a lot of the current policies that are looking like they're going to get passed are going to mean high rents.
Likely the same.
It's going to end up on the end user, because landlords will either have two options. They'll have to sell, or they'll have to put the rents up. It's the only way they can pay for these extra charges. There isn't a lot of extra money in the pot, especially after the last 5 or 6 years of extra taxes and extra responsibilities that they have to pay for. And the extra bodies that they have to be part of, the DPS and all this, which there's a lot. Some of it is well-meaning and is well-intentioned and is necessary, but a lot of it isn't, and it's going to end up costing the tenant more rent and reducing the housing stock, the rental housing stock, that is.
Perfect, Chris. No, really appreciate that. Obviously, insight into yourself and obviously, like say, the roller coaster of the journey of not only an investor but a letting agent yourself. So that leads us nicely onto part one. You know, I'd like to deep dive a little bit into the demand of today. Obviously, Hull as a general. So, what do you think the current rental demand is in Hull?
I think the market is divided, and then it's divided again by location. So you've got residential demand, and then you've got your HMOs, you've got your flats and that side of things. We deal quite a lot on the HMO type of thing, and that at the moment very buoyant. We're about 96% let at the moment across our HMO rooms, and 100% let on the residential. Residentials, again, because of the supply and demand, they're in very, very high demand.
Yeah. So that obviously showcases that there is that natural demand, and that continues in Hull. But you know, are they letting quickly then as well?
Yes, very quickly. I'd say a room within 1 to 2 weeks, and a house within a week.
And the volume of inquiries then on each is that significant? Is that causing you a lot of a lot more work and a lot more headaches, I guess?
Well, it's what we're there to do. So it's not something that we mind. But yeah, lots of inquiries each day. Some very, very busy days. A lot of Amazon workers come in to the area recently.
The new infrastructure there. Yeah,
exactly.
A lot of that happening to the city, and I think that diverses. The trends. That probably leads me nicely onto that. The trends of Hull. Who are renting in Hull. Right now, and is it more so the professionals that are coming because of the regeneration and that going on in the city, or are we still quite student led?
Yeah, I think for us it's certainly more workers. When I started off with HMOs, it was only students, and it was what they call a cohesive group of students. i.e. they'd all go on one tenancy. They put one name to pay the utilities, and that's how it worked. It blew my mind when 10 or 15 years ago, different people would live in the same house and get along. And there's a lot of things that have to come together to make that right, and to allow people to stay in the same house. And that's where the management comes in. Initially setting up the house in the right way, but then the ongoing management, because for instance, 5 different people of different backgrounds could go wrong. So you need to be very careful with who you put in the right houses and manage it very carefully. But yeah, we found it very good, and it is mainly workers. There's obviously Cranswick is a big employer, and that then breaks down to just certain houses on the bus route that picks up to take people to Cranswick food.
So I think to kind of sum that up as a whole, then that demand changes, the trends do change, and I guess it's people like yourself on the ground that notice these and kind of react to that quicker. Is that a fair assessment?
I think react, and obviously you always like to try and be ahead of the curve if you can. Yeah. So we knew, for instance, student numbers were going to go down a little bit this year from last year. Yep. And again, you've got your government policies. Initially, people were coming from Nigeria, then they were allowed to bring their family across with them. Now they're not. So
there's a lot of daily challenges, isn't there?
I think things change, and some things you have control of, and then you've got your macro events where you've got absolutely no control. World events, wars, things you've just got. Government policies, you've just got no control whatsoever. So you need to have a bit of wool on your back as well to weather the storms, and you've got to expect storms because they will come.
Do you think that added pressure of managing other people's assets, is that something that you really strive on? Because it's quite risky, right?
I admire every landlord that does what they do. They invest, and I also acknowledge that when they invest their interest in ourselves, it's a massive leap of faith. Because often, other than maybe a few testimonials and maybe a bit of history, it is a leap of faith. So we do try to give them the best service that we possibly can. It is a challenge, and it is an onerous challenge. So you're facing it from both sides. You're facing that you want to look after the tenants as much as you can. As I've already said, look after the tenant, the rest looks after themselves. And then, but also you've got to make sure that the landlord's needs are looked after as well, and that the compliance issues are kept up, because you can get a £30,000 fine now for certain non-compliance issues. So you've got to keep all over that.
Is there a bit of a checklist there then? Obviously you alluded there, the property standard that you need to drive with the owner. Is there a bit of a checklist that, what are good tenants looking for?
What are tenants looking for?
Yeah, and what needs to be done to that property to secure that, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously they've got a lot of safety issues. I mean, that's first and foremost. But we try to concentrate our properties around the HU5 area, so giving them a good location, a good compliance house, well kept. We put cleaners in to all of the HMO properties on a regular basis to keep things up to scratch. We inspect properties on a regular basis to make sure that standards don't slip, for the tenant's benefit and for the landlord's benefit as well. Because it is easy, and I think some landlords, and a lot of them don't live in the city, and it's easy for them just to assume that everything is okay. They've pictured the property as they saw it maybe 3 years ago. Yeah. But, it needs constant upkeep, constant maintenance, and it needs a lot of work to keep it up to standard and keep the tenants happy. We liaise between the two and make sure that a happy medium is reached.
Okay, so to kind of sum up then, part one, so the tenant demand is strong. I guess the tips and points from you there is obviously the landlord having to upkeep that property to make sure them tenants stay in situ. But let's explore in part two, I guess, the real difference between how properties are managed, what goes wrong, and how that yield disappears, to get it right and got a hands-free investment.
You're listening to Property Untangled, sponsored by CityGate North, guiding investors with clear advice, local knowledge and real opportunities. Call 01482 429 090.
Welcome back to podcast 3 of the Property Untangled, part 2 of the Letting Agent's Chair. We're diving even deeper into the challenges that landlords face, the regulations, and what advice our guest Chris has for both new and experienced investors. So Chris, if we kick this off, what would you say the biggest challenges landlords are facing today or have?
It constantly changes, but we've been through the tax changes and that's had quite an impact, and I think I've seen some landlords leaving the market because of the extra tax that they've had to pay in the past. Now we've got more onerous compliance issues. Some are needed, some are perhaps not, but there's a lot of compliance issues and heavy fines associated with that. The maintenance costs are ongoing, and we talk a lot to landlords about good costs and bad costs and try to lead them into spending on good costs that help tenants and give them the landlord a return on the money, as opposed to bad costs which are just wasted and perhaps not needed. So we talk constantly about that. And then obviously you've got your government legislation that we've already touched on that can change at the drop of a hat. There's a constant air of unexpectancy, I think, at the moment. You just never know what's around the corner. And landlords that have even been in the business for a long time now are having second thoughts as to, is this the best investment? Because the returns are getting lower and lower. And, if you can put your money elsewhere without the risks, then you'd be a fool not to do so. And I think we're very close now to that.
To that threshold.
To that drop-off point, yeah.
Yeah, I certainly feel the same. Obviously my background is assisting people to invest or obviously downscale their portfolios and markets. So yeah, we can certainly see that. It's do I stay or do I go, isn't it? I think that's a really big challenge at the moment.
It is, and you can understand people that they like properties, they want to be in the property business, but it's got to be worthwhile. Yeah. It's got to reach that balance of supplying good quality accommodation and helping tenants that can't afford to get on the property ladder, but it's got to be worth the landlord's while as well, because they've got to get something back for their commitment and their time.
Yeah, and I guess the rules and regulations surrounding that now are squeezing it, but I think we should focus on you've been in the game for 40 years. There's certainly benefits to holding property, and again, it is that real positive feeling of assisting people to live in better homes. So I think that is it, isn't it? It's working with people that know and understand the changes that are coming or, are impending, and it's making that strategy, viable, isn't it? So it's assisting them with that.
It is, and it's all parties working together and communication. I think a good agent is that middleman acting between the tenant's needs and wants and the landlord's needs and wants, and trying to hit that sweet spot all the time. And mostly that's done by the quality of the accommodation supplied
From the outset.
and then from the outset, and then which obviously you help with, and then keeping on top of it after that.
Real juggling act. I think that follows on, though, the value of good management. In your experience, what separates those landlords from the ones that succeed to the ones that struggle?
I'd always come back to the quality of the property.
Okay.
I think having the right quality of property in the right location, and I'd always advocate a landlord talking to an agent before they acquire the property, ideally. That can sort out a lot of the problems for the future. If you've got the right property in the right location, you spend on it in the right areas, make it somebody's home, their long-term home, be it an HMO or residential property. But once you've got that initial foundation right, the rest of it is so much simpler. So, and I think that is, to me, the one crucial element, and that makes it good for the tenants, good for the letting agent, and the landlord then is going to have a future-proof property, hopefully, that will see him through for some length of time.
How does that assist the returns for the landlord, do you think? Because,
it doesn't
we're looking at it as a cost,
it doesn't.
It is a cost.
Yeah, I mean, every landlord has a choice whether to use an agent. They can self-manage. There's the sites out there, such as Open Rent and others. But I do think you have a number of things to consider. You have the rental income, you have the maintenance issues, and being able to deal with them quickly and effectively to the benefit, which benefits the tenants. A leaking radiator might just be a bit of a nuisance or just a thing on a piece of paper for somebody, but for that person living in that house or that room, it's a big event. Yeah. It needs seeing to that day or the next day. Yeah.
So it's a very emotional driven
well, it is.
It's
people's lives. Yeah. It's people's houses. So it's very, very important. Yeah. So self-manage by all means, but make sure that you're across all of the maintenance issues, all of the compliance issues, that you're able to treat the tenant in the way that they deserve. And if you can't do that, then a necessary evil is an agent. And you'd hope that in doing so, all of these things are looked after, and that the fee is compensated for to some extent by the advice and the compliance, the lack of time you have, to spend on it yourself, so you can be more hands-free, and that it's occupied for a further length of time. We always try to say, you can get cheaper agents, you can get more expensive agents, but a good agent will earn their money because they'll keep it full, they'll keep it compliant, and they'll keep the tenant happy, staying longer. So it's a little bit unquantifiable, but I do think that a good agent is worth the weight in gold at the end of the day.
Mitigating that tension between tenant and landlord, isn't it? So
well, it is.
That, in hindsight, then, limits the void period.
Absolutely, yes, it does. Yeah.
Let's just go back a little bit. So there's obviously people out there that are thinking about investing in property. We've kind of covered, some kind of dark spots, right?
Yeah.
We're talking the compliance. It's quite a scary world to certainly enter. They're thinking compliance, agent costs, they're thinking all that now. But, if someone came to you tomorrow as a brand new landlord in Hull, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I think, firstly, to try to work with the agent before they buy the property and get the right property in the right location. And I think that they need to be very practical about the expenses. I think a lot of people don't do the full due diligence and expect a lot higher returns than are actually going to come their way. So you've got to look at all of the expenses, the rental income. You've got to allow for some void periods. That goes with the business, unfortunately, however good the house is, however good the agent is. So I think you've got to be very practical about that and make sure that it's going to be covered and that you've perhaps got a little bit there to cover you through the less good periods, because they do come. They happen, yeah. And don't push yourself to the limit financially. Make sure that you've got a bit extra for any bad times that might come up, for any, if it needs work done on the roof or, a new boiler change. You've got to have that ready, because you can't leave the tenant without heating. Yeah. So make sure that you've got some money put aside for unforeseen circumstances as well. Yeah. So I think location, practical budgeting, and a bit tucked away for these unforeseen circumstances would be the three main things.
Three great things there. And I guess, what should they avoid then? One thing should they avoid doing?
Buying blind, firstly. You need the advice. It's got to be in the right location, got to be the right type of property. And I think it's basically just the opposite to what we've been talking about. Make sure you do those 3 points and, avoid not doing those. I think these HMOs, if you go down the HMO route, I'd avoid getting small properties that are overcrowded. I think those days have gone. You need spacious houses. You don't want people living on top of each other. That will create more voids. And
en suites and things like that, you think?
Yeah, like just about every one of our HMOs now has en suites in, nice kitchen. Most of them have been refurbed. Definitely that is something to do. And avoid getting the smaller, crowded properties. They don't work, and with shared bathrooms, shared toilet facilities. And on the residential side, it basically just comes down to location, getting the right location.
Yeah. And for what your strategy is. All right, so looking ahead a little bit, how do we see Hull's rental market evolving over the next 5 years? Do you think that yields will hold up against any new pressures that come?
Yeah, well, I think we've seen a couple of years of increased rents, but due to demand and people jumping out of the rental sector, it's reduced the housing stock. That pushed rents up a little bit. And we definitely see that levelling off now, and if not coming down a little bit, people wanting cheaper housing. So I think that's where we're at now on rents, at the level / falling slightly.
And you think that will always be covered by new pressures, because you kind of alluded to it earlier. We'll generally pass that on to the tenants.
Yeah. I mean, none of us have a crystal ball, but I do think we're beholden to the government policies that come in and change. They can affect us, or the tenants and landlords, quite badly. So I think we've got to keep a lookout for that and see where that takes us. It's difficult to prejudge where that is going to go. Yeah.
I think kind of then to sum it up, we've got good tenants in and around Hull. There's a very strong demand, and we are a growing city. Hull's rental market has a lot to offer. But, as Chris, you've rightly highlighted, the key is management and how you do the due diligence before buying or stepping into property investment. That's exactly what we want to help. Is people on the ground like yourself helping people buy right. And making sure that they're managed for sustainable returns. So thank you very much, Chris, for being a part of Property Untangled.
Thank you for asking me.
Next part is I will do a bit of myth busting. I'll give you another tip of the week, and I'm going to put a spotlight on an area of Hull.
This is Property Untangled with CityGate North, connecting people, properties and investment opportunities across our region. For more information, visit citygatenorth.co.uk.
Welcome back to the final part of episode 3, Property Untangled, the Mythbuster. So we've heard from Chris there with regards to the student market. Is Hull just a student market? Hull is a broad base of NHS staff, professionals, working people. And then there's the families, that make up HU4, HU8 and HU10. So that is stable family rental zones with long tenancy and low void periods. So what I'm saying there is it is not just a student market. We're going to put a spotlight on HU5. It's one of Hull's most diverse postcodes. We've got student HMOs near the university, bringing yields of 10 to 14%, while the leafy avenues attract professionals and families. We've got strong appreciation in them areas associated with, great schools, the local amenities, making HU5 a balanced area for both yield and growth. It's worth mentioning one of my favourite postcodes too, which is HU55. It's a pocket within HU5 that's seeing strong first-time buyer demand. Affordable terraced and semi-properties, improving schools, the proximity to the city centre is driving the capital appreciation between 5 and 7% per year. That's because it's constantly tested on the resale market from them first-time buyers. So if you manage to grab an investment property in that area, take care of it, look after it, and it will look after you. So a big thanks again to Chris Hodgson for being on the Property Untangled, joining us on the Lettings Agents Chair. A Property Untangled tip: always screen the tenants on more than just affordability. Employment references are great, and past landlords' feedback are just important. A cheap void is better than an expensive mistake.